Quick, like 30-second spiel about where this idea for the demo comes from. This is a piece I just started, obviously, and this is just sort of done for the purpose to illustrate the concept. So the concept is this grid and camouflage. You're all familiar with camouflage. Usually it's in those sort of swirly patterns, but now the Army uses a very sort of pixelated approach. So what I've done is adapt that pixelated pattern to a grid, and the notion is to create sort of hyper-local camouflage. So you can go to a street corner or anywhere and just take a bunch of photographs of that location, cut them up into little squares, and then plot them into the grid according to what camouflage calls it, which is either dark, medium, or light. So that part is really simple. So this might be a pattern, or this might be a painting that's camouflage specific for 5 points in Durham, or it might be a trail out in Orange County somewhere. So it's just a different sort of approach to landscape painting, I guess, but it is pattern based. So what we want to do tonight is create a pattern square that's very simple. Again, it's not, you don't have to necessarily fill it in with blue squares and red squares and yellow squares. The idea is if you put a square here, you want all of these blue squares to relate to it somehow. And then the same with the red and the yellow. And what you can do with this is you can take it and frame it as a piece of art if you like. But there's also a service that I want to point out to you where you can actually have these made into fabric. So there's a company called Spoonflower that's in this area. And they'll take a pattern square and print it by the yard. It'll duplicate, obviously. And I've done this before and it works pretty well. So you could take camouflage for 5 points and make fatigues out of it, if you will, or you know, any sort of thing. You make patterns, you can make napkins, or blankets, whatever. So with that, I think we can, whoever wants to participate, we can dive in and try to make a pattern.
Yes, don't get that's pretty good.
So I'm happy to do one with someone or whatever, just to get things kicked off.
Yeah.
All right, is that how it works? Is that how it works?
Well, just break the ice, and then maybe we'll
How about I'll just keep working on this then? So, and I'm just going to freeform it like normally I would. When I do this painting, I'll have it plotted out. Like 3 squares need to be dark, and the next one needs to be light, and the other one needs to be medium. So, I thought this was like some sort of workshop thing. I don't know. So yeah, it's good. I get paid to work, right? I'm getting paid to do this, right? So a light square. I want to put a light square in here, and this is just a matte medium you can buy at any craft store. I bought this at Bull City Craft tonight. So you need a dark square. So I'm of the opinion that a pattern doesn't need to be like solid squares of color necessarily. You know, while it's perfectly fine, and I do that sometimes too. Make patterns with solid colors. It's okay to have a little texture in there, especially when you have. I consider the end product of perhaps a Spoonflower fabric pattern. They're going to reproduce it just like a photograph, so you can incorporate little snippets of type, specific words, pictures of your dog, or whatever you can weave into that, and just make it more interesting. And it doesn't have to be perfect. All that has to be perfect really are the edges on the end, and that's why we have crop marks on here, so you can cut those out, and as long as the dimensions are pretty much, in this case 5 by 5 in the end. If you were to duplicate that over and over again, as long as these squares correspond, everything works out. So I plotted it out here so it's easy. I'll stop talking because I'm making it more difficult.
So, how did you decide where the yellow, blue, and red squares?
That was just a bit of intuition, but it corresponds. They all work together. If you duplicate it side to side to side, or if you were to cut this out, duplicate it, and put over and over and over again, they all line up. So in other words, there's a blue square here, there's a blue square there. So when you move that side to side, they correspond to each other.
Did you work it out in concept right first? So you can hold up?
Actually, sort of. I did this in black and I think a yellow and a white, just because that was what was in my palette. But that's kind of like a black and a gray and a white. I was again sort of channeling the idea for this painting that it's dark, medium, and light values. Just sort of simplifying it that way. So again, it's a very simplified sort of approach to a pattern. There are 3 values. It's a 5x5 grid, and then just let it go. But with the addition of texture and these other sort of little contextual elements that come through using collage as opposed to painting it a certain color or that sort of thing, there are all these sort of other things that get brought into it. They're almost like little mini paintings, I think. And so yeah, it's really just as simple as putting some medium down. Find this gray you want. I think I want a medium color this time. And so this is, a woman's face. It's obvious, but if it's sort of turned on its side a little bit, it becomes something that's a little more abstract and doesn't necessarily scream, hey, there's a face in there yet, until you investigate it a little bit further.